McCrispy strips are now at McDonald's. I hope you're ready for the most dippable chicken in McDonald's history. Dip it in all the sauces. Dip it in that hot sauce in your bag. Dip it in your McFlurry. Your dip is your business. McCrispy strips at McDonald's.
Your weekend is not complete without the First Lady of New York Radio. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome to the Joan Hamburg Show. It's a Sunday, and 2 o'clock is when we step in front of the microphone, and we do this every Sunday. We love you to join us. We have great guests, and we explore this city and the neighboring areas. We tell you what's happening, what's good to go to, whether it's a hot Broadway show or it's an apple-picking place that you may not have known about. We like to share all of our information with you. Particularly interesting guest this week. Every week they're good. But actor Aaron Neal, who plays a very important role in Leopoldstadt, the Tom Stoppard play, which I have to tell you is, I know Broadway's expensive, and for a lot of people who don't live in the middle of Manhattan, it's a pain in the neck to get in the car and drive and park, but this play is one of the most important plays on Broadway right now, and he's one of our most valued writers. And this is a new play for Tom on Broadway. It is so real, so touching, so heartbreaking. It takes place, it's called Leopoldstadt, and it takes place in Vienna. And when I asked about what that title was based on, it's from the name of a Jewish quarter, which the play actually doesn't take place in the Jewish quarter. It opens in this grand living room in the middle of one of the best sections of Vienna, and it starts in 1899, and it follows a family who is totally integrated into the good life of Vienna. Beautiful homes, important people, major jobs, totally accepted in society. And this play follows the family, the children, the grandchildren, over its 2 hours. And in a way, it could be the playwright, Tom Stoppard's story, his history, and those who surrounded him. Tom Stoppard had a very strong Jewish history and never paid a lot of attention to it. And this play, to those of us watching, is his way of dealing with it and the anguish that comes along with such a story. I thought it was amazing. And as you, when you go to see it, are going to discover, you know, when a play has a real impact on you and the curtain comes down in the end, and often with big musicals, the audience stands up, they yell, they cheer. This play was so intense and so moving and so frightening in many ways with what's going on now. The timing is impeccable, that when the curtain came down, the audience sat. And the performances were extraordinary. But I felt that we couldn't get up. It was too intense. And then as we slowly walked out of the theater, I went with a friend who's a real theater buff. We had to stop and get, not a drink, it was too early, get a coffee, a tea, but we had to let it digest. And we had to start re-examining what we had just seen and talking about the coincidence of what happened in 1899 and what went on for the next 50 years. believe it or not, in this play, and how close this play is to what's going on in our country right now, in our country, in our city, in our lives. This is a play, it's at the Longacre Theater, that you definitely want to see. And I can't wait to introduce you to one of the stars, Aaron Neal. And then, because we all need a little laughter and a little light, guess who's coming? My radio husband, the one and only Arthur Schwartz. And he's coming on today too. And we're going to look at people who change their lives in midstream and follow a dream. It's all possible. And you're all possible. And I love that you're part of our audience. And I'm inviting you to join us Sundays at 2 o'clock. And I'm Joan Hamburg.
The First Lady of New York Radio.
This is Joan Eats.
Last week, I told you about turkeys sold directly from farmers in our area. Now, I want to tell you where you can find really delicious turkeys, smoked and honey-baked turkeys and hams. I can tell you who will send them right to your front door. They save time and oven space for Thanksgiving. I have a little wall oven and a real oven. So the wall oven, which had been with me for like 30, 40 years, broke. And no one could fix it. And it was very hard finding something that fit in that spot. So I always made a small turkey or a turkey breast in the small oven and a great big one in the big oven, but I can't do that now. So I paid a lot of attention to whether or not a mail-order turkey or ham is really good and if it's worth it. Let me give you a couple of choices. Nueske's, Nueskes, Wittenberg, Wisconsin, 800-382-2266, Nueskes.com. They've been doing it since 1933. They specialize in applewood smoked meats. They have really good bacon, ham, sausage, poultry. And for Thanksgiving, they have a smoked whole turkey, which is very tasty, juicy and moist and flavorful. You can heat them up. I like to heat them, I'm telling you. Some people just let it go to room temperature. And a 9-pound whole turkey smoked is $89. 11 pounds, $99. And they have turkey breasts starting at $45.99, or a honey glazed one, $59.99. They have a lot of good stuff. For the best shipping prices, try to place your order before November 20th. Here's the deal, 800-382-2266, or go to Nueskes.com. And out of California, Missouri, Burgers, Burgers, has a really good smokehouse. I have had their smoked ham. My neighbor out on the East End orders this all the time, and I promise you it is delicious. And the founder of the company learned from generations past how to cure the perfect ham. They still do smokehouse stuff. The third and fourth generation is running it. They take whole turkeys, they smoke them, takes them a week, and they slow cook. They have a simple brine. It's really good. And they have free shipping for all turkeys that are taken at that right time. And check the prices too, because it's an excellent product. And I have been using the Honey Baked Ham Company forever. Go to honeybaked.com, 800-367-2426. That goes back to 1957. They have hundreds of locations. They do this spiral sliced honey ham with a sweet and crunchy glaze. They do the same thing on a turkey and a turkey breast. before November 18th to assure on time for Thanksgiving. They arrive frozen and they're ready to serve after thawing. They're really good. And after you thaw, the turkey will stay fresh for 5 to 7 days in the fridge. And we really liked it. So go online, honeybaked.com, or call 800-367-2426. Can make your mouth water. Check them out.
This episode is brought to you by San Pellegrino. A meal isn't just about what's on your plate. It's about what you bring to the table. San Pellegrino believes the table is where the best of life happens. That's what makes gathering around it so rich and rewarding. And with their unique sparkling natural mineral water, San Pellegrino brings its best so you can bring yours.
The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg. Entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Well, it's a very exciting day in Hamburg land because my radio husband of many years is with me. And I can't keep up with Arthur. He's, first of all, cooking up a storm is the word running throughout Brooklyn. People want to move to be near him so they don't miss lunch or dinner. Breakfast is another story. I actually don't know if my radio husband eats breakfast, but we'll find out. But the one and only Arthur Schwartz, truly one of the outstanding food people in the country, former restaurant critic. Arthur has done and is doing. Yes.
I'll do it. I was, for 1,000 years, the oldest, the second oldest living restaurant critic in America. Gail Green just died last week, or earlier this week, I should say.
Or
and so now I'm the oldest living restaurant critic and longest running. But I also was the editor of the food section of the Daily News when it had a really, like a weekly food magazine. And I'm going to flash. I've written 7 cookbooks. I'll get to that in a second. And I am now on an NPR affiliate called Robin Hood Radio, and you can listen to me by going to robinhoodradio.com and listen on demand. So about my cookbook. So I Joan, I cook every day, not every day,
but a lot.
5 out of 7 days. We have at least 1, if not 2, home-cooked meals. I just made lunch, in fact. I just made a pot of, only because I needed to use up some stuff in the fridge.
So what'd you make?
I made the base for a cream of broccoli soup. When I get off with you, I'm going to puree it and add some cream, and that'll be lunch today. That's a light lunch for us, actually. So,
but let me ask you, how do you decide when you cook like that?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was a big deal. Like, what am I going to make for dinner?
Always a big deal,
I'm
Joan.
sick of
it's
the same old thing. Well, how do you decide?
Well, that's it. I do get. Let's say I'm sick, but I do get bored with my own food, and I venture out, and then sometimes I'm going to add that to my repertoire, like a dish I made the other day, but. Most of the time I say, I better go back to my own recipes. And after 7 cookbooks, I have a lot to draw on. Plus, there's all the unpublished stuff in my computer. And I was into baking a few weeks ago. So I made a cake that it's called the Impossible Cake. And you know what? It was impossible. It came out terrible.
What was it?
I'll tell you. It's a funny thing. Apparently it's going around. It comes out. You bake it in a bundt pan. And it becomes half a chocolate cake and half of a flan, F-L-A-N, flan, custard.
I make that. In fact, I just bought.
You make that this impossible cake?
No, I make the flan all the time.
Well, so that's it. So the flan was delicious, but the rest of it was disgusting, and I ended up throwing it out.
Why?
So after we ate off the top layer of flan, which now became the bottom layer of flan. Anyway, and then I made another cake that I thought, this sounds really good. And you know what? That wasn't so good either. So in the end, I said, I really need cake. So I made my own apple cake that's in Jewish home cooking, which I knew was exactly how it was going to turn out. So anyway, I do use a lot of I do cook my own food, so to speak. But, I do get a little bored and I have to venture out.
And then do you rely on recipes that aren't yours or no?
Well, I do. And, I know I have some reliable sources. For instance, if I'm making something Roman or even Sicilian, because she goes to two places, I turn to Rachel Roddy, Roddy. Rachel, who I have had a few lunches with when I'm in Rome. She's an English woman who lives in Rome and who is partnered with a Sicilian rock musician.
Well, that's a good combo.
Here's the best story, Joan. She had the Sicilian boyfriend many years ago. They broke up, and while they were broken up, she had an affair with somebody else. And she had the baby with somebody else.
Aha.
And this Sicilian is so 21st century that he is now parenting the son of her former boyfriend.
Oh, my gosh, only you.
Well, anyway, Rachel is the food columnist for The Guardian, the English newspaper. And you can read all her stuff online because The Guardian posts her column every week. And it's also archived. But she's written 2 cookbooks, and I have both of them. And the reason I have both of them, and let's start with the first one, which is called My Kitchen in Rome. And when that first came out, I wasn't reviewing cookbooks anymore, but I asked my cousin Erica, who was, did you get anything this year that really impressed you? And she handed me this book, and it was beautiful. And not only beautiful, with sort of real pictures, not staged pictures, but I look at I always do this. I look at the recipes I know and see how she did them, and it was like how I did them. So I thought, whatever I don't know, it's going to be good too. Anyway, and they are. And then after she wrote that, she now spends summers in Gelo, which is a town in southern Sicily, which is where they may be married by now, where her partner is from. And so the latest book is called 2 Kitchens. That's it. So her kitchen in Rome and her kitchen, and she lives in Testaccio in Rome, which used to be like a working class community, but these days is, I don't know, in a way it's sort of like the Park Slope of Rome.
That's funny.
Anyway, so I turn to Rachel Roddy.
And cook.
Sometimes, yeah, and it depends on what I'm cooking. I for Jewishy stuff, I have my own cookbook. And by the way, we hadn't eaten carbohydrates really for almost 2 years, and now we're off of the keto diet. And we're eating like normal people.
Was that a good diet for you guys?
Well, I lost 50 pounds, and Bob lost 25 pounds. Yeah.
I can't believe it. How long were you on that diet?
Well, I was on it for a very long time because besides that I lost weight, because I was not eating any wheat products, my arthritis got better.
Isn't that amazing?
And also, my blood sugar is like normal, even though I'm diabetic, and I take a medication, but I have very, very low A1C. It's even lower than Bob's, who's not diabetic. What?
That's unbelievable.
Well, it's not unbelievable. That's what the diet is for.
So you had no pasta or any of your...
I had for 2 years, Joan.
Oh, Arthur.
Not only that, I gave it away. I mean, I had like enough pasta in my cupboard to open a store.
I can imagine.
I ended up giving it all to my housekeeper because I didn't even want it in the house. And I'm not, but I'm eating other carbs. So I was about to say, I was craving. This is a funny thing to crave, but I have funny cravings. Kasha varnishkis.
Oh my gosh! You know how many? I won't even tell you. I don't think I've had it since I was a child.
Oh, come on!
No. I don't.
Well,
I didn't have
I
it.
love it, and I make it frequent. I used to make it frequently. I grew up eating kasha. I had Russian, I should say, grandparents of Belarus descent, because at least my grandmother was born in Brooklyn. but we ate kasha. And then my grandmother would make, and my mother too, would make kasha all the time to go with pot roast or, on a holiday brisket, unless it was Passover. And then we would eat the juices and the onions from the pot roast, the gravy, on top of the kasha. Only on special occasions did my mother and grandmother make kasha varnishkis, which refers to the varnishkis part, refers to bow tie pasta, or egg noodle, actually.
Right. Tell what that one is. It's got the kasha, the noodles.
Pardon me?
Explain what that is.
Well, bow ties, like Italian bow ties, farfalle in Italian. But we call, in English we say bow tie pasta. And the bow ties, actually, it's a pinched flat, the bow ties are a ribbon of pasta that's been pinched in the middle. And what I love about them, and I must say I'm into them lately, is that they provide two textures in one bite. You get both a slightly al dente, where it's all pinched together, and the softer, where it's the wings, so to speak, of the butterfly. Anyway, so you mix kasha. I'm going to quickly give you a recipe.
Okay.
All right. The thing about kasha is it clumps together unless you do this preliminary thing, which is to beat up an egg and stir in 1 cup of kasha. I do this right in the pot that I'm going to cook the kasha in, which is a saucepan, 3-quart saucepan, let's say.
And you can buy that anywhere, right? The
kasha is in every supermarket,
okay.
At least in the New York metro area.
Okay.
Wolf's is the brand that most supermarkets carry. Since I live in Brooklyn, where there are a lot of kasha eaters, I can buy other brands, but Wolf's is an excellent brand, and it comes in whole kasha. It's groats. By the way, kasha is buckwheat groats. What it is the seed of buckwheat, which is sort of a kind of grass, to oversimplify. It's not related to wheat at all, and it is gluten-free. It's a gluten-free grain. So you can buy kasha in whole groats, medium groats, fine groats. I think there's also a coarse-cut groats. I happen to like the coarser rather than the finer. What I made the other day was with the finer because it's what I had in the house, and I want to actually use it up. So you stir in a beaten egg and put it over medium-high flame and stir it. It only takes a couple minutes until the kasha is no longer clumped together from the egg, but separate now. And then you add your hot liquid. In my case, I added what did I? I happened to have beef broth, so I added for 1 cup of kasha, you need 4 cups of liquid of broth, and I put that in. Salt. Cover although my beef broth was well salted, so I didn't add salt, but so you got to be careful there. And then you cover the pot, put it over medium heat, and 10 minutes. It's all the liquid has been absorbed, the kasha is all fluffed up, and then with a fork, fluff it all up, and stir in. For a cup of kasha, I used a pound of onions.
Wow.
Sliced and fried.
What do you
and I
fry
like to fry the onions until they're really dark.
Okay, that's the way I make onions too. What do you fry them in?
That's such a Jewish taste, I got to say.
Yeah, like overdone everything.
Yeah, well, not overdone everything. I'm sorry, I don't go for that.
I know.
But definitely well caramelized onions, to use current lingo.
What do you cook them in?
Well, for kasha varnishkis, usually just vegetable oil.
Right, a neutral oil.
A neutral oil, right. I happen to have some schmaltz in the refrigerator, and I was tempted to do that.
Fat.
But I didn't. Yeah, chicken fat. So anyway, that's it. And then you stir in your fried onions, and for that I used, you know what, I do weigh my pasta these days because I don't want to overeat pasta. And you think you actually want more than you need. So I think we were 3 people that day, so I measured out 6 ounces of pasta, 2 ounces each person, boiled it up until it was tender. I did not use all that kasha for that amount of bow ties. I had leftover kasha, and I must say it reheats extremely well. You either put it in a covered dish in the oven, like if you're making something else in the oven, or you can put it in the microwave. It microwaves very well.
Right. Is it a main course, or do you
Well,
serve
kasha
it?
varnishkis was lunch for us, for me, for Bob, me, and my next door neighbor.
Okay, lucky next door neighbor.
Well, Ellen is a doll.
Are you?
We had to say that we're neighbors now for 24 years,
gosh.
Joan. I've been here 24 years.
Hard to believe. I remember the Tudor Place apartment.
In Tudor City, right?
Tudor City. With a, I know.
Anyway,
that was
time
a long
goes
time
by.
ago. It does. So, do you make meat at all?
Yeah, I do. Let me say this, though. Both Bob and I have had some dental issues lately. So, and he's a baby when he gets sick. I'm not so bad. All men, I think, fall into two categories.
Right.
They're either hypochondriacs or deniers. I'm sort of in the middle, I got to say, but he's big on being a hypochondriac. He enjoys it. So anyway, we had to eat soft for a few weeks. I did too, because I was having a dental problem too. So we haven't eaten much meat lately, but I still love a great steak. And
do you make it home, or you say
Well,
out?
I don't go out too much these days, but that's the one thing I would like to go out for is steak. We have some great steakhouses in Brooklyn, and there's a new one I'm eager to get to called, I haven't been there, but I think it's called Gus's Grill, something like that.
Where? In Brooklyn Heights?
No, it's, I guess they call that Carroll Gardens. No, but the place that I swear by is not Peter Luger, by the way, but it's not so far from Peter Luger. It's called, I want to say Di Stefano. God, my memory, Joan, is just not what it used to be.
No, we need it. So don't give it away yet. It will come back. Have you been?
No, it'll come back in a minute. But the thing is, there are two with similar names that I keep getting confused. Di Stefano's is on. No, this is the other one. Oh, yeah. So Di Stefano. Anyway, there are several reasons that I love Di Stefano. First, of course, the meat's incredible, and not just steak, not just beef, but they have an unbelievable pork chop too. So that's one. Two, they could not be nicer.
That makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference. I have a friend, remain unnamed, who's very hard of hearing. And his doctor told him that when he goes to a restaurant, especially a noisy restaurant, he should try to sit in a corner with his back to a wall right by him. Whatever. So I call the restaurant and I say, I know, because I know the layout of the room. I said, I know that blah, blah, and can we have that table? Absolutely. So I'm going to put your name on it. And then I had a call back for some other reason, and they were still very nice. And so when I got there, I said, I think her name was Claudia. Where's Claudia? I want to thank her for being so nice. And I went up to Claudia, and she said, you just got me on a good day. It was that kind of friendly answer. Anyway, and then the tables are widely spaced. There is no music on the sound system.
You
can talk to your friends.
Unbelievable.
Right?
Yes.
And also, they're in a corner of Williamsburg, or maybe you want to call it Bushwick. I'll tell you a cute story about that. Where you can actually park. So I just take the car.
Perfect.
10, 15-minute drive. So the thing is, the first time I went, the friendly waiter was chatting with us, and it came out that he lived in the neighborhood. It was a great job for him. He could walk to work, blah, blah. And he was obviously a hipster. And I said to him, well, where do you live? He says, I live they now call it Bushwick, but when I moved here, it was East Williamsburg.
Oh, gosh.
No, originally it was Bushwick, but now they're calling it East Williamsburg.
Yeah, of course, perfect, right?
You get better rent, I guess, in East Williamsburg.
You've got a very chic neighborhood.
Yeah, well, I don't live there, but I do live in a nice neighborhood, but it's not anywhere near there. Joan, I have to give you a Brooklyn tour.
I know.
It's about time you familiarize yourself
Well, don't forget, my husband
I
was
know, but
brought up on Crown Street, so we used to go back for what we called persistence of memory tours.
well,
but it's not the same.
No, Crown Street is beautiful. That is near me. That's just the other side of Flatbush Avenue.
Yeah.
And I always say, I have been saying, I've always lived, except for my years in Manhattan, I always lived within 10 blocks of Flatbush Avenue, and now I can see it from my bedroom window.
Oh.
So it's just down the avenue. By the way, speaking of just down the avenue, there is a restaurant. There are a few restaurants that I swear by.
Which ones?
But there's an Azerbaijani restaurant on Coney Island Avenue, and Avenue P, where I've been going for pre-COVID anyway, so a number of years now. Great food, great prices. We usually go for lunch, but on the weekends it's crowded with a lot of Russians and Ukrainians.
Yeah, what kind of menu?
Well, if you like meat, it's a good place to go. The Azerbaijani make incredible grilled meat, but even chicken. The chicken, I mean, I swear by the chicken there. I never order chicken in a restaurant usually because I make my own chicken. But there we eat chicken. Lulya kebab, which are the little ground meat kebabs, they're sensational there. And they come wrapped in a very, very thin flatbread, so you can eat it with your hand in this flatbread. They have a salad, a sweet and sour eggplant salad topped with feta cheese and nuts, walnuts. Wonderful. There are a few Russian things. They make great soups. In fact, one of my friends usually goes home with the cream of mushroom soup because that reheats very well. They make borscht. They make an Azerbaijani soup with lamb ribs in it.
Oh, that sounds good.
They make. I am always looking for somebody to eat organ meats with, and ends up almost nobody I know eats organ.
Even
meat.
liver, like calf's liver.
Well, the liver I eat at a Turkish restaurant. They make the little cubes of liver.
I love that.
And my favorite Turkish restaurant is right across the street from. By the way, the Azerbaijani place is called Village Cafe, and they have a tiny parking lot. But recently, they decided to rent out some of the spaces in the parking lot. So there is often no parking in the parking lot in front of the restaurant. However, because I'm a regular there, they let me park and block in the people who are renting spaces. It's just that I have to go out and move the car if somebody
But that's
comes.
annoying. But it sounds
It's not annoying to me. It's better than having to search for a parking space.
Exactly.
Anyway, and they have and the same guy who owns the restaurant owns a liquor store, which is also on the parking lot, and you can BYOB there.
Oh,
so anyway,
okay.
for a lot of reasons, so they have a dish called Rizzi Busy, which is several different organ meats, including testicles, gizzards, liver.
I hate to tell you.
Whatever, all sautéed together with potatoes and onions.
Well, I like the sautéing with potatoes and onions, but we could do without some of the.
Yeah. No, well, that's the problem. I can never and it's too much for me to order for myself. So I'm always looking for somebody to go there with me. But the new place, which is closer, we may actually go there today for lunch, even though I made this soup. There's Pete Wells reviewed this in the Times last week.
What was it called?
It's called Dunya, Dunya, and it's an Afghani restaurant. It's the only Afghani restaurant in Brooklyn. And Bob and I used to go to an Afghani restaurant on St. Mark's Place in the city, in Manhattan. And we actually became friendly with the owner. They closed a long time ago. And since then, we've been craving oshak, which are these Afghani dumplings, steamed dumplings, filled with scallions and leek.
Wow.
And then dressed with a yogurt sauce and if you like, a drizzle of meat gravy.
It sounds so. Many
fabulous.
years ago, you and I had Afghani dumplings when we were doing for a short time our Saturday show.
Well, there you go. Maybe it was from then. It was called Cafe Kabul.
It was so good.
It was so good. So this is the first. I mean, by the way, years later, our Turkish restaurant, the owner, so it's called Taci's Beyti, this really, really good Turkish restaurant on Coney Island Avenue. The owner, Taci, he's dead several years now. His son, Ersan, runs that restaurant. But then all of a sudden, and Taci got lung cancer, went back to Turkey, was remission, didn't stop smoking anyway, but went to, he pops up on Metropolitan Avenue in Queens. So I said, what are you doing here? He says, well, I opened the other restaurant for the eldest son of my first wife, and I'm opening this one for the eldest son of my second wife.
That's funny. So
he was in there for a while cooking and teaching whoever is cooking there now how to do it all. So one day he said, my wife is Afghani. I said, oh, maybe, does she make orshak? Oh, yeah. She'll make you an Afghani meal one night. And so one day we went out to Queens and she cooked for us. It was wonderful.
Was it good?
No, it was wonderful. A memorable night, too. So anyway, this place is terrific, has a very hospitable owner, is very nice. Dunya. It's on a totally nondescript block of Coney Island Avenue. I had a laugh when Pete Wells said, "Oh, they have this strip of Coney Island Avenue is mainly body shops and whatever." Well, my father was an auto mechanic, and when I was a kid, we had to go to Coney Island Avenue all the time because that's where all the parts houses were. Mm-hmm. Where they sold.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Everything.
So, and now there are still a remnant of all those auto service places. And by the way, good gas prices.
Yeah, well, better than we have. By the way, who's
Who's
butcher?
we? You mean the Hamptons?
No, New York.
Well,
too.
I don't know. I don't know what the price of gas is in New York, but here it was down to $3.39 the other day.
Well, it's funny that we consider that a bargain.
Well, it's okay.
It is. It's okay.
Let me say, let's segue to food prices, which is more my bailiwick, because I know nothing about gas prices except how much they are. But we have a new supermarket in the neighborhood, brand new, just opened a week ago.
What's it called?
Well, it's actually a division of Key Food, but it's called Food Universe Marketplace.
And?
Which I consider a really stupid name. So Bob and I have decided we're just going to call it Key Food. Yeah. Because if you go to the website of Food, whatever I just said, Food Universe Marketplace, you end up at Key Food. And Key Food has a house brand called Urban Meadow. That's the key. If you go to a supermarket, even if it's not called Key Food,
look for that.
And they have Urban Meadow products, which, by the way, are mostly things I've tasted have been very good. That's the Key Food house brand. Anyway, I go into the supermarket, and, the prices are high. And my neighbor next door, she said, oh, well, I'm not going to shop there. The prices are too high. Here's the deal. Those are the new prices. It's just that the older supermarkets have stock that still has the old prices on it. This is just open, so everything is the current price.
Which
and the current price is high.
Very high. Anyone who shopped for turkeys are going to be in
I know, but I must say, I am a very fortunate man, and I don't have to really think about what I'm spending on food. But still, I'm very cognizant of food
what's
prices,
gone on. Yeah.
And I'm a good shopper. So I go to this new, what my neighbor thinks is expensive supermarket that isn't, and I find they have those big bags of mandarins, which I love.
I just bought one.
What'd you pay?
You know what? I don't remember.
Yeah, you probably aren't conscious of it either. I paid $2.99, which I know is very cheap.
Very.
Yeah, and then you got to be a good shopper. The other thing is like meat. I couldn't believe that their meat was as well priced as it is. Now all of a sudden, beef is looking not so bad.
Yeah. And anyway. They have what, Prime or Choice?
It's not. Listen, it's not my first go-to for meat.
Good steak.
But but I did find. Listen, we have this very snobby butcher opened in Prospect Heights. It's only a few blocks from me, and they charge $3 a pound for chicken backs, which I use to make broth. Joan, I get insecure if I don't have broth in the freezer.
I know how you feel. I do too.
So, and I ran out of broth sometime in early August. So when it was finally cool enough to have a pot going for 6 hours. Anyway, so they charge $3 a pound. My butcher, who I buy them from all the time, a real butcher, he charges $1.50 a pound, and they're frozen because he bones out a lot of chickens. And for broth, it's okay for them to,
sounds good.
The new supermarket's 99 cents a pound.
You're kidding. That's a bar.
So I bought 10 pounds, and I now have enormous quantity of broth, a really good broth, I got to say, which I use to make my soup for lunch today if we eat it or not.
When you make your own chicken stock, which I do too, it all started when my husband would insist on poaching chicken for the dog. And
I remember this.
You remember? And I would have more chicken stock than any living person because he insisted the dog eat 3 meals a day.
Well, of course.
He absolutely ruined the dog because she's not eating anything else but organic chicken. At one point, he said he'd only buy kosher chicken for the dog because it was fresh. He was, with that dog, he went crazy with the dog. Anyway.
Yeah, but why kosher?
When you make your own chicken stock, you put all the chicken backs. Do you do vegetables in it too?
Yes.
Like carrots?
What I do is I throw it all in a pot with plenty of water to cover it. You can always cook it down later.
And what vegetables?
And then, no, I don't do that yet. I bring it to a boil first and skim it for usually good 15 minutes of skimming.
All right, that's the chicken backs.
And then I add carrot, onion, celery.
That's it.
I don't add greens, no herbs, because it turns the broth greenish. If you want that, you can add it at the very end. I don't put in parsnips. I'm not making Jewish broth. I want it to be very
strong,
generic broth, so I can do anything I want with it. So for the 10 pounds of backs, I put in it was a substantial onion. It could have been a 7 or 8 ounce onion. It was a nice size onion, which I quartered and threw in the pot, and 2 nice sized carrots, which I peeled and quartered and threw in the pot. And then celery. I had really nice celery, I got to say too. So I used at least 2 ribs outside ribs of celery in the pot. And that was it. And peppercorns, I would say about a teaspoon of peppercorns
and
a few cloves.
It sounds really good.
That's it, and salt.
I love the way it sounds, and I love talking to you.
And then I cooked it for 6 hours, Joan.
Oh, my gosh.
I put it up at 6.
Low?
And pardon me?
At a low heat?
Yeah, perking away. I have a stock pot. So at one point, sort of like after 3 or 4 hours, I had to top it off with some more water, but my pot doesn't really encourage evaporation. So I could do it 6 hours and not even look at it.
Right, that sounds great.
And before I went to sleep, I turned it off, left it on the stove to cool, got up in the morning, strained out all the solids, which I do with a strainer, and I have a napkin, an old linen napkin I've been using for years to do this with. And that's it. And then I put it in the fridge. And then once it's chilled, I skim off the fat.
Sounds good.
And then, by the way, my broth, this they sell this bone broth, which I think is
in my neighborhood, we have a bone store.
Let me just say, bone broth is bullshit. I don't know if I could say that on your station, but
you
it
did.
Is. But I did. Well, bigger people than me have said it. Anyway, point is, all that is cooked long enough so that the bones give off their collagen, and the broth itself should gel. And I had a hard gel on this broth. Cooked 6 hours.
Wow. Sounds good. No one does it better. Arthur, we'll talk again. Arthur Schwartz. I miss you, and I love hearing you talk and all about your food adventures.
If I don't do anything, at least I cook.
You cook, and no one does it better. Thank you, Arthur. Said
practice
love to
makes
Bob.
Perfect.
Yep.
Have a great week, Joan.
You too, honey. I'm Joan Hamburg. You're listening to WABC, and more to come.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg. Entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome, everyone, and I want to share a play that I saw recently. And one of the most, well, can we use the word heartbreaking, emotional, real, something special on Broadway, the new Tom Stoppard play. And it's called Leopoldstadt. And I learned that was the name of a Jewish quarter in Vienna where this play took place. And you meet in the beginning of the play, which I think is 1899, Aaron Neal, who plays Ernst, who is a Christian, married to Wilma. And Aaron, I want to make sure I pronounce her name right.
You do.
Her last name.
You do. Thank you. Yeah, you've got that perfectly right. In fact, you've got pronunciations that it took us 3 weeks in rehearsals to align on. So your instincts are very good.
So I'm really glad. But tell me a little bit about this play. We walked out of the play so moved that, you know how usually you're yakking or talking when you're out play, you're running, grabbing a cab. We couldn't do that. We felt we had to go and sit down somewhere, again, having just gotten up. And we had to digest the impact, especially at this time in our own history. Right. It's like Stoppard, for his own emotional well-being, I'm sure the play was incredibly important to him in many different ways. But for everyone in an audience with what we're going through in this country, the diversity, the sometimes turning our eyes away from the reality of what's happening. So I'm curious, as an actor, and your character too, and we follow you and your family through unbelievably good times, a total assimilation for this population, to extraordinarily difficult, horrendous times that are part of history. So tell me where this happened to you, when you were called for the part, or your agent or something. How did it happen?
Well, in my personal journey through it is interesting, because I saw it announced and I thought, well, Tom Stoppard play, Leopoldstadt, it's about the experience of being a Jew in Vienna. Well, I'd love to go and see that. I'll obviously never be in it because I'm not Jewish, and I'm a person of color. And then the call came to audition. I was a little bit bewildered. And of course, Tom being Tom, he has approached this incredible story with as many perspectives on the stage as possible. And one of them is a character who is a Protestant doctor, who is a friend of Freud's, because all of these people are sort of bubbling around in the milieu of Viennese society. And he marries into the family. He marries in to one of the two families we focus on. And so the first scene you open on is this sort of mixture of religious and cultural influences. It's a family primarily of Jews. One of them has converted to Christianity, so they have a Christmas tree. There's a doctor who's married in. And it strikes me that it's very typically Tom to include almost every perspective he possibly can on an issue through the very many characters on stage. So for me, it was kind of an unexpected joy to be cast in it, because I thought the play was magnificent when I read it, and that it has a space for me, who is not a Jew, is kind of personally thrilling. And I think Tom, to be fair, is making the point that the story of the Jews in the 20th century is humanity's story, not just the Jews' story. And the idea that the unspeakable tragedy of the Holocaust was something for Jews to talk about is, to me, obscene. I mean, it seems like the architects of that tragedy were all Gentiles, and therefore it is our reckoning and our shame. I feel, anyway.
Right. And to see this family at the end of 1899, and we open, there's this incredible Christmas tree in the midst of this Jewish family. In fact, life must be so confusing to these little Jewish children that one of the children in the beginning of the play actually puts like the Star of David or a Jewish symbol on the top of the tree. And
it's quite,
go ahead.
I was just saying, it's quite gloriously funny. And we negotiate that every night, where the audience sit down to watch what they feel, what they have been told is, in air quotes, Tom Stoppard's Holocaust play. So they sit down with a very sort of serious expectation, and they open on exactly on the scene as you described, this sort of crazy mixed family Christmas that will be familiar to so many of us who had different cultural and religious influences. And the poor children are incredibly confused. And like you say, one of them puts a Star of David on the top of the Christmas tree. And you can feel the audience from the stage. You can feel the audience, their relief at their permission to laugh, that this journey is going to be funny and full of life and enjoyable, that the family are going to be enjoyable to watch. And I'm always moved by the fact that we often meet these people at the end. In our culture and in our literature, we see people with shaved heads and striped pajamas, and it seems to me to rob them of an essence of their humanity. And Tom is determined to show you the life before, so as you can acutely feel the loss. So you are going to spend 20 minutes in this sort of riotous, witty, crazy, funny family Christmas to start with, which I think is quite a wonderful trick on his part.
Right, and you have love interests, and you have it all. You have gorgeous food, and you look at this, and how could anything happen to this incredible family so assimilated into society of Vienna? Nothing is going to happen to them, but history doesn't lie.
Well, that, I think, is one of the most powerful messages of the play, is that you may have thought that the Jews were always under a degree of persecution that simply intensified to a horrific level with the Holocaust. But, one of Tom's discoveries, or at least one of his facts that he wants to present, is just how wildly integrated and successful the Jewish community in Vienna were. And the character of Hermann Merz is he's very keen to articulate this point. We're only 1 in 10, but we're the doctors and the educators and the lawyers. What does he say? Is that lovely line? He said, my grandfather wore a kaftan. My father wore a top hat to the opera, and I have the singers to dinner. We write the music. We pay for the tuition. It's so shocking to see how unexpected anything is in 1899. And when they're discussing Theodor Herzl's Judenstaat and the possibility of the Jewish state, Hermann's argument is, why on earth would we want to leave Vienna when we've got it so good? And the question is sort of brutally and tragically answered over the next 2 hours.
Right. And it makes you think, even if you are one of the few who are unaware of what's going on,
right,
that this happened and this is happening and it can happen during these times. I was in Germany with some friends not that long ago, and there were, at that particular time, there were uprisings and all kinds of things going on. And we all looked, we said, how could that possibly be again?
Right.
But our world is very complicated, and it is, which is why this play is so important, not only for the actors, as you point out, how this has touched you and moved you in so many ways, but for Tom Stoppard, who also had to come to deal with his Jewishness and the fate of his family. His grandparents all were killed in the concentration camps.
And Tom, as it were, makes an appearance in the play. I won't spoil it for people who haven't seen it. But this is very much sparked by a journey that he undertook into his own past. And his mother, Marta, who took the name Bobby after she married an English major and escaped to England, really was keen to hide her Jewish heritage because she thought it was going to happen again. She thought there'd be pogroms in the north of England. And for Tom to do the archaeology, and by happy accident, really, by visiting of a European relative, he asked him, how Jewish were we? And Sarka, his relative, said, well, what do you mean? We were Jewish. Right. And there's a character in the play who has managed to evade a reckoning with his Jewish past, who is almost a cipher for Tom, and he's towards the end of the play brought to come to terms with what he's blocked out. This rather beautiful line Tom was once asked, what's the key line of the play? And you'd expect him to prevaricate and talk around it. And he said straight away, oh, no, I know what it is. I know what it is. He said that the whole reason I wrote the play was this life, no one is born 8 years old. Leonard Chamberlain's life, his Leo Rosenbaum's life continued, but you walk as if you cast no shadow behind you, as if you have no history. And I think that's Tom's reckoning with himself. He always used to talk about having a charmed life. And maybe there is in the play a sense of guilt or a sense of atonement that he has left it so long to reckon with his past. And I think that's what makes it very moving. It's a very vulnerable and searching examination of the role of the past in the self. And, he's probably critical of himself for leaving it so long. You can feel it in the play.
Right, without question. And as we follow him and follow you, and I'm just curious, the play, I have friends who live in London, and this was a big deal. And were you surprised you were in the London edition?
I've been in it. I've been lucky enough to be in it since the beginning, so pre-pandemic. And then we were closed down during the pandemic, then in the revival of that production post-pandemic and here. So I've been in every performance, which is a kind of dizzying privilege, really, to consider. But in answer to your question, the strange thing is it's Stoppard, and I keep asking myself the question, who is the equivalent playwright whose new play would be met with such anticipation? And I find it hard to come up with an answer, if I'm honest. Maybe Tony Kushner. He stands so tall over the theatrical landscape that, in a way, I wasn't surprised because it flabbergasted me when I read it. And Tom has such a pedigree, and I think that the nature of it and watching it dawn on audiences just how rawly moving it was. Because Tom is often known for his witticisms and his flights of fancy, although I think all his plays are desperately moving. But you expect a workout of the mind. I don't think people expected quite as big a workout of the heart as we had, and that response that you articulated, which is we all as company members have known this of our guests who've come to see it, which is they're all very buzzy about having a talk afterwards and maybe going for dinner. And they come out rather flabbergasted and shell-shocked and often in tears and unable to speak, really, which I'm very grateful for, because there would be nothing more obscene than addressing that subject and for it not to hit its mark.
And did you know when this started Aaron, that this, when you first read it and saw it, that this was in many ways about Tom's history. And even though he says, it's not my family, but it was a family that could have been his family.
Well, it's very Tom, isn't it? It's so impish that he writes himself quite sort of obviously and clearly, or at least he says there are aspects that character shares with himself, but that he writes his family so wildly differently from his own family. And I think Tom, being an intensely private person, he didn't want the play to be about, he didn't want the play to be gossip, which essentially would be, let's see what Tom thinks of his aunts and uncles. So I think to remove almost any confusion, he creates this rather glorious family. And of course, Tom is from Zlín in Czechoslovakia, and this family is in Vienna. So I think there are other things, as always with Tom, there are other things he wants to explore. He's just very interested in that moment in Viennese history in 1900 where Schnitzler and Mahler and Freud and Klimt were all hanging around this sort of incredible cultural moment. And there are so many threads referencing those people. In fact, the first image of the play, you can see copies of the Interpretation of Dreams and copies of Judenstadt and copies of Schnitzler's La Ronde being read by this erudite family. So Tom is just unable and unwilling to cover more than 30 subjects in one play, I think, and that's what makes it quite baffling. But yes, what I think the glorious trick of it was, and I was saying this to somebody as we were warming up, is that they feel like real people. They feel like real people to whom this happened. And of course, they're fictitious characters that Tom has made up, and they go to a death that many horrifically went to, but they weren't real. But they feel so real. By the end of it, you feel like you've witnessed a documentary about a family almost. And again, I think that's a testament to Tom's skill at weaving a tapestry of a believable family together.
Right. And to the audience, that family is Tom's family, even though he says it isn't. But if we're watching it, the reality of those performances, including yours, Aaron, is that they're real. Nothing can take away that reality. We may want to deny it because it's too painful and horrible, but it happened, and it's still happening in places all over the world. And I'm sure as an actor, it's incredibly painful too, and it probably occupies a lot of conversation here in America. Do you sense what's going on here and the diversion, the derision, the differences between various groups and various peoples, and the anger that seems to be everywhere, right?
It's impossible to ignore it, and there seems to be, it's fascinating. There seems to be a vicious othering of people from outside this country. It's almost terrifying, the level of scapegoating that's happening. There seems to be complex problems in this country that are affecting people terribly and under huge economic and social pressure. And yet there seems to be one voice coming out of the political spectrum that is viciously attacking a powerless minority and blaming them for everything. And that's just an uncanny parallel to what was happening. And I think the most terrifying part of the play is that you join the characters because the play goes through time periods, and without wanting to give anything away, you join the characters on the day of Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass in 1938. And on that very day, the day when almost all Jewish businesses were smashed and looted, there's a character in that room saying, "Oh, you don't understand. We're used to this. It'll pass, and something else will take its place." And the sense of how quickly we accept the vicious rhetoric of essentially fascist demagogues, and how quickly we just say, well, this is what they say to whip up their base. They don't really mean it. These are just uncannily like the things that were said in 1930s Germany, and terrifyingly so, because one wants to believe that can never happen again, and one looks for reasons why it could never happen again. And yet, I would say, whilst doing this play 3.5 years, I have seen things happen that I thought would never happen again in the world. And so, where this is all leading is such a pertinent question. Just the rise of vicious and virulent anti-Semitism, with no sense of where that has led historically, is incredibly sobering.
Very, very. That's why the time for this play has never been more important. And I think, right?
Agree, yes. Yeah, I agree. And you know what I would add is that I'm almost keen to tell people that Tom is just, this is not a somber, dark documentary where you are bludgeoned over the head with a horror that you know about already. That would be just an insult to Tom's ability. I'm amazed that Tom has managed to put such beautiful, warm laughs into the play that don't feel in any way jarring, but also feel utterly necessary because, if you want to see the story, if you want to feel the snuffing out of life, then you must feel the life as deeply, as strongly as possible. And like you said, people fall in love and people laugh. And really, the first half of the play takes place in almost a completely different world. There is this stuff looming, but it's funny and light and loving and warm and clasps you into the bosom of the family. Sorry, yes.
Well, it's quite incredible. Have you noticed the audiences are similar here and in England, or do you sense a difference in the reaction to the play?
There is a difference, and I will say this because probably no one in England will hear this, but they're just smarter here. I mean, it's a smart play, and there are laughs that we have thought always were. If you know the play well, there are laughs that you get because Tom is being incredibly witty and that you're making allusions to things scenes previously. And the British audience weren't as vocal, whereas the American audience, they just feel sharper, more open, more willing to laugh. There's that wonderful, the expression of emotion, in my observation as an expat here, comes a lot easier to Americans and New Yorkers than it does to us repressed Brits. And hearing both the laughter and a sort of wall of grief and sniffles at the very end of the play. And the other night, a woman, just openly sobbing and crying, not in a demonstrative way, but just overtaken by the play.
Yes.
It's so lovely to get such a vocal reaction, and I hope nobody who watches British theatre listens to this because they'll feel insulted, but it has been my experience.
Well, they're a little more repressed, but we'll excuse them.
True. Not denying.
We'll excuse them because they're great when it comes to theater and takes chances on everything, so
right.
It's special, and we appreciate it all. And thank you, Aaron Neal, a wonderful performance and an amazing play. And we've all been pronouncing the name of this play wrong.
Yes, I think it's been said as, Tom's such a trickster because, it's Leopoldstadt is the district. But of course, the play isn't even set there. It's the place that they come from and they go to.
Right.
But the play happens in their brief journey out of Leopoldstadt, if you like, into the center of the heart of Vienna. But it is as much a state of mind as a play. It's the sort of poor Jewish quarter of Vienna that they emerged from and tragically went back to.
In the end. I thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Joan. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I appreciate it.
And we'll talk to you again, I hope. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC. More to come.
The First Lady of New York Radio.
This is Ask Joan.
A lot of people are resisting getting a flu vaccine or a COVID booster, I'm always amazed by how many people don't want to deal with it. You hear all kinds of stuff. Oh, I heard there are bad side effects from the COVID booster. I don't want to get the flu and the flu vaccine. The truth is, people are being urged to get the flu vaccine. There was a big story in the Times the other day, and all the leading scientists and medical people were warning of what they called a twindemic. Did you guys see it? They were saying COVID-19 is still very prevalent, and you've got to really try to take care of yourself. The flu vaccines, according to the authorities and the scientists, are quick, they're safe, they're available, and they're not going to cost you anything. In fact, if you live in New York, you're a New Yorker, you can call 888-NYC, the number 4 NYC, and make an appointment. Or I went into my CVS and I didn't even need an appointment, but you got to check so that you don't waste your time. All these things are in the air, and New Yorkers and wherever you live should get vaccinated against the flu. We don't know if we're going to have what they call a twindemic, but it's getting colder, and this is when it all happens. And the flu is contagious, and it is very serious. And the vaccines are the best defense against illness. In fact, when I read the Times piece, it said the health department has categorized flu activity as widespread, and the Center for Disease Control recommends everyone over the age of 6 months get vaccinated against the flu, especially if you're a high-risk person. So it's here already. And the flu vaccine has been updated since last year. And someone asked, is it possible to become sick with the flu and COVID? Yes, but the vaccines will prevent getting a really serious illness or a serious risk, especially from a flu infection. So it's something to know about. And they'll reduce flu-associated hospitalizations. If you know someone who's pregnant and they're asking about flu vaccination, it helps prevent pregnant people from flu during and after the pregnancy, and it may protect the people around you. So check it out. There are appointments, and a lot of the drugstores are doing it without. So this is something you should not take lightly. I'm Joan Hamburg, and we have much more ahead.